Let's give it about 10 seconds before we really kick into the interview here. So we're just gonna chill here while we're getting everything to go live right now. It looks like we're live on a couple different channels right now, guys. We are getting live, and for those of you joining us today, this is a very special simulcast edition of the Marketing Geeks podcast, where we are going to be joined by somebody that is exceptionally high up in the corporate world. We have an employee, a marketing professional from Netflix, joining us on the show today. Kevin Laurino, you graduated from Chico State with what was your degree in, Kevin? It's an art, some type of
graphic design and communication.
Yeah,
design and communication.
Well, why don't you, first of all, welcome to the Marketing Geeks, everybody. Here we are doing our simulcast. But why don't you give us a little bit of backstory about how did you end up at Netflix doing what you're doing? This is fascinating.
Yeah. I was 2007. I finished up at Chico State, to be a graphic designer, photographer. Did that for a while. I spent 10 years working on the entertainment marketing side. So, creative development and supporting teams doing movie posters and everything for brand and entertainment. So 10 years on the creative agency side. Had my own shop for a bit. 2008, Nick Norris and I started a small little boutique design agency, did that full time for 3 years, had a blast, but ended up jumping into, a bigger company in a different role. Most recent job before Netflix was at Trailer Park. I was managing the print production team there, and a team of finishers and artists, and made the switch. It was my first jump to the client side. It was a trip. It was a big difference. I'm used to being all hours of the night. You can never say no. You're the vendor, needing to make sure everything's all buttoned up. Being on the client side is different, and I love it. And the team at Netflix is some of the smartest people I've ever met. It's a little intimidating rolling into a room with such smart people.
Oh, I get it. So let me get this right. You were in a trailer park, and then you were like, "Mom, spaghetti," and then all of a sudden you're like, "Netflix."
Boom. That's it.
That's it.
So how big of a company is Netflix now? Like, how many employees? Like, what kind of revenue you guys generating over there? I mean, you're a decent sized company, right? You're kind of small time, medium time.
I think it's up to small time, medium time. I think it's up to 6,000 employees globally, and growing like crazy. Every Monday morning we've got a coffee with your stunning employees. So just the interview process and the hiring is kind of at a breakneck speed. I started as a team of one. Now there's a dozen of us, and that's been 3.5 years. So
they have a cloning machine in there, and they just
they just start banging it out all day long. It's a good thing.
So I actually applied for Netflix here in the Netherlands. They have a huge office, but did not get the job.
You get a call back? You talk to anyone?
No, I got one of those really nice return emails. It was kind of like bim bam. I hit the button, and then all of a sudden it's like, "Thank you," but
autoresponder.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
But no, it's a fantastic company, I hear, and even the benefits are pretty good because you have a newborn, right? And they gave you you're able to manage the business that you're doing from home part-time, right?
Yeah. The family leave policy is fantastic. Also sick and vacation time. There is none. Netflix is slow to hire. There's a whole gauntlet of interviews you have to go through. But once you're in, you have ultimate trust. There's the aspect of freedom and responsibility. So if you need time off, you take time off. You don't have to submit for it. Netflix hires fully formed adults, and they trust us to get our job done. So with the family leave, it's up to a year, fully paid, 100% salary. So, when I started Netflix, about 8 days later, my son was born, and I don't recommend starting a new job and having a child in the same week. That was too much. So fast forward a couple years later, my daughter was born. I had 4 months off. It was amazing. I just totally checked out. I was able to spend time chasing the other 2 kids around while my wife hung out with the baby. And then right now, The new baby's 3 months old. You know, I took a month off, and now I'm just in the office on Mondays. I'm able to really manage the workflow and everything remotely. You know, I was already on 3 calls this morning, you know, just moving stuff around, putting out fires. But the team in place is so solid, and they're so good at what they do. I don't need to physically be in the building. You know, and Mondays are just my kind of FaceTime with everybody. I get to check in, and things keep moving. It's pretty exciting being surrounded with such go-getters that you can have the faith that you can kind of step away and things keep moving.
So tell us about the time that you got the job at Netflix and you made that jump. You had the boutique agency, and then was there that moment that you're like, oh, I might have to get a job, and so you just applied? Like, what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, and then from the, you know, the boutique agency to Netflix, I think was a 5-year period. So I didn't jump from one to the other. You know, I jumped into other agencies, and then I was at Trailer Park. You know, it was, you know, kind of the biggest role I had to date in the, you know, entertainment advertising space. And I honestly, guys, I've never done this. I saw a job posting on LinkedIn, and I fired off a PDF with my resume, and that was it. I kind of didn't think anything of it. You know, any job I've ever applied to, I either know somebody in the company, or I've got a headhunter recruiter kind of working to get me in there. Yeah. This one wasn't. You know, it said print producer / designer, and I was like, oh my God, that's me. You know, that's everything in that list is everything I've done, and I didn't know Netflix had that. You know, it's a very digital first Silicon Valley type of company. So I fired off my PDF and got a call 2 days later, and it just kind of rolled from there.
What was it like transitioning from like having the resources you had at your boutique agency to the resources you had at Netflix? Because it must have been like night and day with the level of money that you have access to all of a sudden.
Well, it's silly, right? You know, and you know, it's always nice to learn on somebody else's dime. You know, I mean, we were pretty bootstrapped, you know, with the agencies 2008 to 2011 when I was there. But we did have an Epson. You know, we had a large format printer. We threw it in Nick's living room. You know, his wife wasn't a huge fan of it, but she put up with us. But yeah, I'm able to make moves now, and the budgets aren't a concern. You know, if I need a new $15,000 machine, you know, computer for some high-end retoucher to come in to do it, I don't have to ask permission. I just do it, because in the first 2 days of them sitting in that machine, we've already made that money up, and then we've got the whole rest of the time, and it's profit. So it's that kind of nimbleness and access to resources, but also the trust and freedom and responsibility to make the decisions that are right to push the business forward. It's fantastic. It's you know, just running with it and pushing things forward.
Yeah, that's incredible. So what are some of the projects that you worked on, and what were some of the types of media that you got out there?
Yeah, early on, like I said, 100% of titles were my responsibility. So now the team's much bigger, and it's kind of in verticals. There's a print producer aligned to the films pod. There's somebody on docs and unscripted. There's somebody on stand-up comedy specials. But I was fortunate enough to be on all of them. So, you know, I mean, one of the most exciting ones was probably Luke Cage last year. You know, we do a lot of billboards, we do a lot of movie posters. But our responsibility is also digital out of home. So anything that needs to be kind of visually communicated to people driving by at a rate of speed, you've got that 1.5 to 2 seconds to capture them. You know, our team, we all have, you know, either design or art backgrounds. So we're the visual communication people. But Luke Cage was awesome. We pulled some permits from the city, and we were able to tip a billboard, you know, 8 feet, you know, on its side. And we had a 3D Luke Cage, like lifting up the cityscape that was our key art. And we didn't just sculpt it. Like, we went to Mike Coulter's house and scanned his face, you know, the actor that plays Luke Cage, and then 3D printed it. So it wasn't an artist representation of his face. It was his face.
Wow. Because you really, like, when you say no limit, like, you can come up with a crazy idea like this and make it happen.
If the idea is solid enough, the money's there. Like, we did 2 of those billboards. Each of them, I think, was over $100,000. But we did one in LA, we did one in New York. And my favorite headline of anything I've done, I saw a news article that said "best billboard ever," and I was like, "Oh damn, that's my billboard!" So it was so fun. So many people were involved, and it was a collaborative process between us, the creative agency, and the media company who kind of secured all the vendors. But It was just the coolest thing, man. You know, the die cut cityscape up top, and he was lifting it up. So we saved one of those Luke cages. It's in storage just in case.
That's so cool.
Just in case you ever need a Luke Cage. I think you should just take it and then put it in front of like the CEO's door,
just
like
right
Christmas
there.
morning when he opens it up. Wow. So okay, so the question I have for you has to do with, like, you know, first of all, there's a couple of components to this. Number one, when people think about marketing, it's all kind of digital. The print medium is going away. You do some of that. So tell me, like, what kind of goes through your mind when you're doing a campaign like this to visually grab people? Like, how do you determine what ideas are worth pursuing?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a few parts, and you mentioned, you know, print's going away. It's actually interesting if you look at the industry. Outdoor advertising is the only, you know, kind of traditional medium that's in the black this last year. You know, while digital and online, yes, all those ad revenues are skyrocketing. You know, you think of print magazines and newspapers. I mean, those are all just down year over year. But Billboards is having a resurgence this year and last year. It just something about either the nostalgia of it or the effectiveness of it or whatever it is. It's growing as far as media dollars and market share, which is exciting for me. Also, last year, I don't know if you guys know, Netflix kind of doubled down on their outdoor advertising and bought half a billboard company, right? So we now own 30 billboards on Sunset Boulevard.
Wow.
And we, you know, took the placard off and put up a Netflix. And it was kind of funny. There were other entertainment companies who still had contracts and were advertising on those boards. So it'd be such and such a show, such and such a studio with a Netflix placard under it.
Are there any ways that you could track, like, billboard metrics? Like, I mean, do you just estimate, like, the number of impressions that you're going to get because you're in a certain spot, or like how do you track, like, how effective?
You know, and that information comes from the media company as we determine who our target is for any type of content. They'll say, you know, this billboard is this price in this city, and we say there's, you know, 450,000 over 18 impressions per week or per month. You know, I mean, the media companies and the billboard owners and the landlords, you know, they do that as part of sort of their pitch and sales process of, like, hey, buy my billboard. You know, we've got this many adults that see it each day, but you know, there's no click-through rates. You know, there's no real metrics. You know, you just kind of trust that based on traffic patterns, and hopefully people aren't looking at their phone; they're looking up and seeing a billboard. But yeah, it's a little looser.
So like KPIs in general are going to be a little more difficult to track. So on one level, you just don't know, right? You don't know, like, what the return on that is going to be.
Well, there are tests that we've done. You know, Netflix is a testing heavy, data decision driven company to its core. And we have done tests in the past of, you know, kind of national campaigns. We will find different 30 different markets that have similar demographic, sociographic, you know, level of saturation for Netflix membership. And we'll do tests. We'll throw billboards in one town and not in another town and see what viewership does. You know, so there's like I said, people way smarter than me designing these tests to sort of see if there's lift. And I was a little terrified about that, because if those tests came back and you're like, yeah, no change, billboards don't work, I was looking for a new job, right?
One of the campaigns I know that you were pretty involved with was the Santa Clarita Diet campaign, which had a lot of, like, kind of controversial material as well, because you got like French fries with human body parts and, like, things like that going on.
Yeah.
A little bit about that campaign. And I believe, didn't you have, like, one of your billboards get banned or something in at least one country?
Yeah, that was a fun part of it. Yeah, and you know, Andros, you were asking about what creative gets chosen, right? Like, what works, right? So it's kind of the same part. That campaign specifically was a lot of fun. You know, we were kind of pushing things, you know, those finger fries, we found on a map where the McDonald's were, and we threw those billboards above there. We had the arm wrapped in tin foil, and we found a Chipotle and we put it above there. So specific media placement is a lot of fun to play with when you have these different concepts. And yeah, it was in Germany. So we've got our kind of national, like, kind of US specific campaigns. And then we have regional offices all over the world. So the finger food and kind of the food puns, Justin, is what I showed you guys when I did that presentation. And the regions took it and ran with it. There was sangria with ears in it, instead of lemon wedges. There was different kinds of pasta and strudel. And it was in Germany that it was like a schnitzel or something. I mean, it looked like a hot dog, but it was a severed finger. And it was, the media placement was kind of like an LA Live, in Los Angeles. It was huge. It was in a square where families are, and it was a little gruesome. So people got all kind of up in arms and really upset. And we didn't end up bringing it down. But it was a win. Internally, we were celebrating. We're like, oh man, we pushed it so hard. Maybe we went a little too far on this one.
You have to consider that when you get like banned, you're going to get extra press too, right? Like you're going to get the media picking up that story, and even though it's banned, now it's going to get probably more reach than before. 100%. Is that the case, or like?
Yeah, and the eyeballs. I mean, that's exciting, right? The goal is not to ruffle feathers and offend. I mean, most of the time. Sometimes there's a title worth pushing the boundary. One kind of mistake I made. And again, if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not trying hard enough. And pushing things forward is what's really exciting. Glow, I think it was Glow season 1. We had a photo shoot. We had, I think it was Allison Brie or one of the actresses kind of licking their middle finger, and we also had one kind of licking their index finger. And we were going edgy, but it was a really conservative city in Texas that we put a wallscape up. And I mean, the square footage of this building was like 2/3 the size of a football field. It was the biggest thing. And she's kind of licking her finger, flipping everybody off, and families are driving by. And in hindsight, that was probably the wrong call. We should have chosen the other photo. So that was a really expensive thing. That's a lot of material. But we took it down. You pivot, you put something else up, and you learn. You got to consider the audience. You got to consider what city it's in. And just be appropriate with those choices.
But is it on another side, it's kind of like that alone is a news story that goes national. And of course, you can't help but mention the show when you're mentioning this story. And it on some level, it plays well in other areas, right? So, I mean, isn't that part of the tactic?
It's going to speak to a certain audience, right? Be like, oh, that's offensive. That speaks to me. Yeah, but at the end of the day, we're not trying to show kids, middle fingers.
Yeah.
But yes, if there's people,
if a kid picks it up from that billboard and that's like where they learned it for the first time, I'd be shocked.
Yeah,
should be proud. Should be proud if that's the case.
Yeah.
But I get that controversy kind of plays better in some circumstances than others, so it makes sense.
So, do you ever do mixing of like types of exposure? Like, for instance, do you ever use like geolocating for some of your billboards? So you say, well, if somebody is around this area, we want to expose them to an ad via Google AdWords or Google Display Network or Facebook. Do you ever do that too?
Yeah, we have a whole digital producer team that we have definitely kind of played with that. We've done some, whether it's kind of QR code or other things to have a billboard kind of come to life. The digital team could kind of speak better to that. I know that they've played with those types of things. What I thought you were going to ask, instead of kind of cross media, is actually like mixed media, like actually using different materials on billboards, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we've done backlit, glowing billboards. We've thrown, we did this whole Stranger Things logo in neon, we had a 50-foot neon and put that up, which was really fun. For Disjointed one year, that was the what's her name, owned a pot shop. We did neon lights and, black light and literally an animatronic arm with a pipe kind of going back and forth to her mouth. And it was, we just built it out, we had a great partnership, a great vendor that physically built out all the mechanics of that, hoisted it up, on a crane and made a billboard out of it. So those are a lot of fun.
So I take
That's
it that some
cool.
shows, though, like Stranger Things, must have like almost an unlimited budget versus like other shows. I mean, is that is that kind of the case too?
It is, right? So you definitely have your media, excuse me, you have your media budget to spend. But again, if the idea is there, you can kind of horse trade and pull money in just to really get something to pop. You know, we did with Neil Patrick Harris.
Series
See
of
the show?
unfortunate events.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Blanking. It was fun. You know, we had art, but we wanted to do something kind of talk to traffic. Be like, oh, you know, you're on Doheny. Traffic sucks, doesn't it? You know, so we instead of just doing one billboard and then printing a bunch of those, it's definitely more expensive to have custom art. But with the tone of that show and the placements that we had, it was really exciting and really appropriate to get a copywriter in and start speaking directly to people. And that gets a lift. You know, it's anything outside the norm. You know, another example is Chef's Table. Chef's Table pastry was really fun. You know, the key art was this beautiful tiered cake on a pink background. It was gorgeous. So we did some bus shelters, and you know, Milk, I think it's Milk Bar. You know, the cookie shop is in New York, and so we had that, but we pumped smell of cake.
Wow.
Out into the street, so people
How
are
do you
sitting
do
there
that?
waiting for a bus. There's companies that do sense. You know, one project I was aware of, I wasn't a part of, was the Willy Wonka like red carpet event at, you know, Grauman's Chinese Theater, because I worked right across the trailer park, you know, in that same neighborhood. For their red carpet event, they pumped chocolate smell into the whole city block.
It's the Johnny Depp one, the Johnny Depp Willy Wonka.
It was, yeah, yeah. You know,
Wow.
it was years ago. So I mean, and you guys know, you know, of your senses, smell is the one most closely tied to memory. So you kind of tap it into the psychology and nostalgia of people with the scent. So when we were able to do that with the cake smell, it was just so fun, you know. So
you talked about personalization. You talked about personalization a lot. Like how does I know that the thumbnails on Netflix are like personalized to your interests, right?
Yep.
Do you is that like a separate digital team that does the artwork for that, or are you involved at all in the personalization aspect of creating like artwork for movies to customize based on interests? And what are you looking at? Are you looking at demographics? Are you looking at psychographics? Like how are you personalizing?
Yeah, those are all good questions, and the answer is all of the above, right? My team, and in its current form, supports marketing efforts. There's an entire separate, you know, creative producer and even designer team for product creative. And product, the way that we talk about it, is everything you see when you go on Netflix, right? Netflix.com. There's the box art, there's the billboard art, you know, everything within the interface, you know, even on mobile. So many different canvases, so many different shapes and sizes. So that's product creative art. And there's the concept of diversity, right? Which is the opposite of a marketing campaign, right? Marketing, you think of marketing campaign, you think of cohesive, consistent, you know, you've got the same visual vocabulary, the same color palette. So wherever you are around the world, when you see that, it looks and smells and feels like that campaign. Product art is different. Diversity in the sense of different color palettes. Sometimes it's a single person. Sometimes it's a couple. You know, it's aggressive, or it's a relationship, or sometimes it's an inanimate object, or, you know, I mean, like Orange is the New Black. The random chicken was one of the thumbnails that did better than any of the other ones. Sometimes it's just the title treatment on a white background. So you've got diversity in the sense that it's a really wide gamut of art to choose from. At one point, you know, they're constantly testing. You know, you got a period of time where you test and you get a winner, and there would be a winner per country, and then that's the art that gets served up to a viewer in that country.
So you have things where it's like blue plays better in England than the Netherlands. So
yes,
do you have it even where, like, say, different regions of the country get served different pieces of art because they play better?
Yeah, you know, it's gone even further than that. It is, like Justin said, it is purely individual. So there's no longer a country winner. I'll see something different than you see something, then he'll see something. It's all based on our personal preference and our viewing history, and all of that, which is exciting because everybody can have a different and customized experience. And the hope is that you're serving up things that you're familiar with, and you're serving up things that you're maybe not familiar with, but sort of excited about. And the fact that there's, any number of pieces of art for the same exact content that could be served up to different people, sort of based on what they've clicked on in the past.
That's really, I mean, it really shows that customization, and we talk a lot about this on the show, is that really getting into the niche markets and customizing your message is the most effective type of marketing. Yeah. And that's why Cambridge Analytica, by the way, plug for the most excellent Great Hack documentary, which, as a side note, we had someone leave a message on a review for us, and they said that sometimes I get too political. And actually my response is, like, if you watch The Great Hack, marketing is political. It's all political.
It is. When you think about what we do, it's propaganda in its earliest forms, right? We're telling stories and manipulating, mindsets, right? The goal is to entertain, but it's also to educate. And the psychology and design tactics that all of us utilize have been used for years to change hearts and minds of groups of people. It's all the same.
We need to get into some of the fun stuff now. So Netflix, a lot of people have been asking, because Netflix has been the dominant player in streaming for a long time now.
Yeah, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
There's been a few side players. There's been your Hulu, and I don't know if HBO is even on the same par. But there's been a few. But now we have other big companies entering the mix. So I know that Disney Plus is the big one, because they're coming in and they're also going to undercut the pricing. Like, they're coming in at $6 or $7 a month. They're coming in cheap. It looks like they're going for a big market share. That seems to be their intention, and I would imagine they'll raise their prices after 2 years. I'm sure that's coming. But in the beginning, they're coming for the market share. So how is Netflix responding to Disney Plus? And then Time Warner has their own service coming out, and I know that they're taking Friends off of Netflix, and so I know that apparently that's been a big hit on Netflix. They never share the metrics, so we don't know that for sure, but I've heard that. So tell me at least a little bit about how you see this. I know we've talked about this in the past, and how competition can be very healthy, but I want to hear your take, because things have changed even since last time we talked about this. So.
They have, yeah. No, it's a really interesting year with all the announcements, right? In addition to Amazon Studios and Apple, and I even throw Quibi into the mix. I
don't even know what Quibi is, but I love it.
Right? It's just yeah, right. Short form mobile hasn't even launched yet. It's exciting. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not a zero-sum game, right? Mm-hmm. You can have a number of different services, and I think the winners are us, right? Like, we're the winners as the consumers of television and entertainment. There's some amazing content out there, right? And to have such access to it, that's the most exciting part for me.
Okay, I need to step in right here, because as a consumer, I have a bone to pick. Not with you. This is one of those things where I'm not yelling at you, customer service person, but I'm very upset because the OA, Okay, now here's the thing. Sorry, I'm going to pull up my soapbox.
What do you got?
So first of all, the OA, for those of you who haven't seen it, it was one of the most mind-blowing original shows I've ever seen. Probably one of the best things on television ever. The first season was amazing. The second season, when I realized what they were doing, my head popped off. Mm-hmm. It was so good, and I was so ready for season 3, and then canceled. And it's a very loved show. People are very, very passionate about it, like myself. But here, so there's an issue here, and that is when Netflix first came online, it was really a place where it's we could be daring, there could be original programmings, we could tell these long form stories. But I understand there's money to be made in it. But on some level, there's another part of it where I feel that Brite was created because enough people said, well, because you like Lord of the Rings and you like cop shows, Brite.
It was a decision by algorithm, right?
Yeah, it was a movie made by an algorithm.
I hear you. I'm happy to hear how passionate you are. That means we're doing something right in developing good content, right? You would never get worked up over a crummy TV show. So that's exciting.
When we recorded, Kevin, you said there was like a mini protest outside of Netflix though for the OA too. So there's other fans out there then too, right?
There are other fans. You know, I saw somebody with a sign said "Bring the OA back." You know, she looked very distraught. And I respect the fact that she's passionate about it to go out there. There's also been billboards. You know, I was telling you guys earlier that face our building. That's like, you know, bring the show back. You know, somebody's putting their money where their mouth is. You know, it's like, hey, Netflix, give us some resolution. And that's, again, it's exciting to see people passionate about it because the content is great. At the end of the day, you know, those decisions are way above my pay grade, right? And there's a ton of viewership data. There are efficiency models of spend versus viewership. And then some things are just expensive. You know, you're spending $10 or $12 million per episode on a thing, and you expect a certain level of return from it. And even if there's viewership in the US, but not throughout the world, you know, I mean, this is a global company with, you know, hundreds of millions of subscribers as that kind of test pool. And you're looking for a certain level of viewership.
Do you see Netflix evolving even further away from like content, getting the rights to distribution rights from studios, and even more so as their own studio kind of going forward? Because we see that seems to be the trajectory that Netflix is headed in.
Oh, it already is, man. They put like 15 billion, right? 15 billion.
They put a lot, but they still also have a lot of distribution rights. You still got a lot of movies.
And it's a sliding scale, right? I mean, you go back just 5 years, you know, House of Cards, and even like Lilyhammer, you know, just before that. You know, it is a sliding scale, you know, as we approach that kind of 50-50. I don't know what the ultimate goal is, but you know, as people freaked out, all Disney, all Marvel, it's all going away. You know, Miller World is now wholly owned by Netflix, you know, and they're different stories, different characters, but the foresight that the content acquisition team has is really exciting. You know, just this year and last year, people are like, what are you going to do? Disney's coming. They're taking everything away. And internally, we're like, we're surprised it took this long. You know, so having that foresight to get into original content is pretty exciting, because if right now we were like, oh man, we should probably be doing our own thing, because then we'd be
way too late.
Yep.
I think back to like 2008. I think it was 2008 when you first came out with House of Cards, around that time anyway.
Yeah.
And like the company's stock was down to like $20. Like all the pundits were talking about like Netflix was going to demise, and then all of a sudden House of Cards comes out, a few other original content shows come out, and the company explodes. Like
Orange is the New Black was one of those, you know, early ones as well. And then, you know, Quickster, that dirty word that we try not to use, you know, you split the company up, everybody freaks out, and we're like, hey, that was the wrong call. Bring it back, and you know, make sure you listen to your customers. And
was that the DVD by mail part? Was that what that was? Okay, that's what that was. I remember that. Okay.
So I mean, I've told this story before on the show, but I at the time I was working in cable, and I was making a lot of money. And you know, Netflix was still a DVD mail order company. And then when the VP came in, and I talked to him, and I said, "What?" Because Netflix just announced their streaming service. And at that point, I sat down with him and I said, what are you going to do about this?
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he goes, that's not our competition. Our competition is the video rental store on a Saturday night when people aren't watching cable.
Yeah.
And
Blockbuster.
And I was like, man, you guys are done. That's it for you.
Well, and that's it. And you got to identify what business you're in, right? You know, if Blockbuster or anybody else said, like, I'm in the brick and mortar video entertainment, you know, rental business. If they tweak that maybe and said, hey, I'm in the entertaining people at home business, you can still have the same business model, but if you approach it a different way, you take off the blinders of how the landscape around you is changing.
That's a great point about pivoting, because a lot of people, they keep hitting the same thing over and over again, and if you can, as a business owner, just pivot a little bit and say, how can we do this in a way that people can relate to it just the same way, what they love about it.
And it is a nudge, right? It is a pivot. It's not a complete left turn. You know, you've got momentum, you keep it going, you just a couple degrees to the right, and you can keep it going. But if you stay the course and everything changes around you, it's a sad day.
a company like Blockbuster Video was positioned to buy a company like Netflix, no problem in the early days if they had the foresight to look at that. Obviously, they didn't, and that doesn't mean Netflix would have sold. They might not have. I don't know the I don't know the passion behind, or what their mindset would have been, but it would have been. They definitely had the ability to either buy them or to take them on much sooner, because I think Blockbuster launched like a DVD by mail service like 5 years too late.
I remember those commercials. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it felt like a
Desperate.
reaction versus and it just didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, Kodak.
foresight.
I think Kodak invented the digital camera. It's
They did. Yeah.
yeah. So it's crazy how you hear these stories, and it just takes kind of a fresh mindset. So one of the things I was wondering about, especially in doing the print media, this was one question that was stuck in my mind, is that when you design more of the billboard aspects, these are really kind of pieces of art that you are showcasing. Do you also think Instagrammable moments in your mind when you're designing these things? Is that part of the process?
And it's exciting. You're directing the question at me, but there are, there may be 100 people involved in answering that one question. So my team is creative marketing production, right? We support the creative marketing team. So the strategy, the artwork, the photo shoots, the compositing, and even the social media strategy and assets and stills and videos, everything goes along with that. Our whole teams, and most of that creative development work is done by outside creative agencies like Trailer Park, like the companies that I've worked for in the past. So we're going back out to those creative agencies saying, hey, pitch me 30 ideas for a billboard, and then we'll give you notes. So there are creative marketing managers that are writing the brief, determining who's the best market for this piece of content. We also have marketing planning and analysis, we've got and consumer insights. We've got the smartest psychologists saying, hey, we did a focus group, we think this group over here is your best market to target. Then the creative brief goes out. Here's who we're going after. Women, 25 to 40, this income bracket or whatever it is. And you've got creative directors, art directors kind of doing that. So they're culling the pile of art down, and then kind of running it through the executives. But ultimately, like I said, everybody's got freedom and responsibility. So the person running that campaign ultimately is going to decide what's best. You also have to route it through talent and showrunners. People have varying levels of approval. So there's a ton that goes into landing on the strategy and the physical, final creative. And we trust that those people know how to speak to their markets. Similarly, on the social side, there are full teams. And the copywriters, there was one comment online. It was like, I feel like the Netflix Instagram handle was taken over by a teenage girl, right? And it was like the copywriters that are on that team were speaking so directly to their audience, it was uncanny. And they're so talented to really just speak to people where they are and know their market. It's not like some marketing dude trying to talk to teenagers. It's like they're friends, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not right. And luckily, there's, like I said, people smarter than me running those channels because they know their audience so well, and that's so exciting. So once that trickles down to my team, we just make the art the best it can be. We do all the retouching, we do all the adaptations. If you've got a vertical piece of art and you got a horizontal billboard, we're trying to respect the art and showcase it in a way that's going to be best for the show, best for the brand. Make sure nothing's infiltrating our Netflix logo. We got our brand team that works really closely with us to make sure that we're on brand standards. And you got enough contrast so people can actually see it. I want to know what it is. I want to know that it's on Netflix, and I want to know when I can see it. And then by then they've already driven past. So that's it, right? So we're doing that last piece and getting it out the door. The really smart strategy and creative is done with another team that we support.
I have a question that kind of goes to the back end of the Netflix business. And is your revenue almost entirely based, or is it entirely based on subscribers? Are there other means that Netflix monetizes? Because somebody asked this question, and I instantly thought it was all subscribers. Then I kind of wondered, and I was wondering is there any other way that Netflix monetizes beyond the subscriber base?
There is, there's still the legacy DVD business.
It does exist.
It does. It does exist. There is, a good amount of people that are doing that, and that, that's profitable each quarter. And more recently, our very first kind of tiptoe into merchandising was Stranger Things season 1, and I think the test was at Hot Topic, right? You can get some T-shirts and some, there was
here in the Netherlands, you can get some Stranger Things shoes.
You can. That's awesome, right? And that team started with like just 1 or 2 people saying, "Yeah, let's try this deal," and it's blown up to an entire department now. I think we pulled somebody from Disney, merchandising, which is an amazing, win to bring that talent in. There's video games. I mean, that is now its own force to be reckoned with. And,
makes sense.
And you look at the latest Stranger Things, there was new Coke and the upside down Whopper. I mean, just the tie-ins and kind of the partner marketing aspect and the licensing and merchandising aspect is very new. Early on, that first sort of test with Stranger Things, it was cool because the goal was just for brand love and those moments of joy for fans, and just for pure awareness. There was no intent or even need for it to turn a profit or even break even. It was really about the joy that it would bring people. But
kind of like the OA.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point.
And the joy took away when they canceled it.
Oh man, right? Better to have loved and lost.
No, I want to follow up.
Yeah. You never
Now,
know.
do you ever see Netflix considering an advertising model? Because I mean, you look at like Hulu, they have like different tiers. One of the tiers allows for commercials, one of them doesn't. Is that something that they would ever consider? Because I mean, there must be a killing of potential profits that Netflix doesn't accept by not allowing advertising, because they could make
ad revenue. Yeah. That's a question that comes up constantly. As a new employee, we've got the, Reed Hastings has an ongoing kind of Q&A doc, and he'll get in there and just answer. It doesn't matter who you are, he'll answer. And we all get to kind of hang out and sit in a room with him and kind of pick his brain. So it's definitely a question that comes up often. And his answers is really standard. It comes back to just kind of like the one-liner, where our sweet spot is a, monthly commercial, ad-free subscription-based model. And that's it. And it's not sports, it's not live television, it's not ad-supported. Those are very legitimate businesses that other people are doing really well. It's just the business. It's not the business that we've chosen at this point to be in.
If Reed ever wants to come on the show and explain it to us in person, we'll accept him. We will take Reed Hastings on the show. And if he wants to make a Netflix special about the marketing geeks, we'll even let you do like 3D plasters of our face. So
look at that. Yeah.
It would be a great show. Every week we take on a new guest, and then we just real time watch people stop watching the show and stop listening. So all of this is we're getting a little bit towards the end here, but I've got a couple of other things that I'm curious about.
Yeah.
The first is since it is a data-driven company, and it's almost like you guys know what. You really have a pulse on everything, how long something's watched, what's being clicked, how they access the content. I'm curious about the future and kind of like where it's going. My son is a big fan of the Minecraft Choose Your Own Adventure. Yep. And I noticed that there's more of that, which is kind of interesting. So I imagine
branched narrative, Andros. It's not. You can't say that. It's branched.
Thank you. Copyright. Yeah, that's right. Good looking out, Justin.
A branched narrative. I'm curious about why you guys aren't making a new episode of Black Mirror every day.
Oh man, that's a great question. I get on board with that.
Yeah, and so tell us about kind of the future of where entertainment is going and advertising, and how those two things are kind of intermingled.
The advertising piece, again, I don't foresee an ad-supported model coming up, but the interactive piece, the branching narrative is really exciting, right? If you take an active role in that higher level of engagement versus just passive watching, that's really interesting to me. The kids space is ripe for good and more and better content. Whether it's animation or live action, I don't know for sure, but I'm curious to see if there are going to be any interactive, like learning based children's programs. I would love to sit here with my kids and have them pick which color on screen and be able to punch it into a controller or something. That could be a lot of fun. Whereas Bandersnatch is fun for me and my wife to interact with, right? So the branching.
Did your kid watch Word Party and dance in front of the TV like mine does, my 1-year-old?
Oh, completely. Yeah, totally. And you know what, that with Jim Henson, those are actors with, sensors on. So if you ever seen any behind the scenes, you see these people just kind of doing the dance. And then when you see the animation, it takes it to a whole other level.
My son loves the theme song to that show. Like we put it on and he'll wherever he's doing, he like stands up and starts dancing.
Yeah. I don't know. For some reason, my 5-year-old doesn't like watching things in order. She'll watch the same episode 6 times in a row and you just get those songs stuck in your head. But the kids space is exciting, right? So
there's so many good shows. She-Ra, I gotta say, I'm a sucker for She-Ra.
Yeah.
I hated to admit it, but when I started watching that show, I'm like, damn, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
The Hollow blew my mind. The Hollow was
Hollow's really cool. You see that Kevin Smith, Masters of the Universe is coming out?
I read that. Yeah, I did read that. Yes.
I'm stoked about that. I'm also really stoked about the new Breaking Bad movie.
Oh my God. What's it called? El Camino?
El Camino. Yes. That Jesse Pinkman story. I am so excited. From what I hear, it picks up, right where it left off.
I mean, everybody's really excited about the Bryan Cranston cameo. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Oh, come on.
Tell us. Leak it here on Marketing Geeks.
And then, of course, the new Scorsese picture is coming out. It's like his longest movie, 3.5 hours, The Irishman. That looks super good.
Yeah, we've been working on the key art and billboards for that. It's fascinating the way they're telling the story and how they're aging and de-aging the actors. I can't wait. I can't wait to see that one.
It sounds like there's definitely a lot of good stuff coming to Netflix. So now is not the time, despite the Disney Plus. Plus you could afford
that much. What is it, like $10? I mean, I can afford both.
It is. Plus, you look at Disney, right? You get Disney Plus, ESPN, and Hulu for $13.
Yeah.
I got room in my budget for both because
let me ask you this,
because value in both.
I have a few listeners that left some questions for the show here. So some of these are kind of like reiterating what we talked about, but I'm going to read them off here. So we have Islam Ahmed, who's a donor to the show, so we need to give his question a shout out. So how does Netflix see their future? What is Netflix planning to do in order to differentiate from the increasing competition? So I guess that's a little bit different. How do you see like the differentiation happening?
Create great content, right? I mean, and that's not necessarily differentiation. It's just if you build it, they will come. If you've got an amazing story that's produced well with top talent, people are going to show up for that. And again, it's not a zero-sum game. If we've got great content and somebody else has great content, both of those platforms deserve your dollars, right? If the content starts to slip and they no longer deserve your dollars, then market share starts to slip. So it's about looking to the future and just really putting amazing shows and movies out there.
A couple more here. Real quick. Questions. Go ahead.
Before we hit, I just have is there basically like some shows that are produced kind of by algorithm? Like they say, well, we need a show that's kind of a romantic comedy that falls in line between these two shows. So let's look for that type of content to make because we know that type of thing is.
Adam Sandler is.
I would say that. You think about in business, you do a SWOT analysis, right? Where's your opportunities, threats, so you plot these points and then you're like, where's the gap? Let's make our business fill that gap. So I would venture to guess that, yeah, absolutely. You look at the slate of content that you have, and then you look at the like hundreds of pitches that you're getting every day. And I would assume, again, I'm not on that team, but they may skew what they're more open to looking at or greenlighting. Based on where maybe a gap is in the slate. But yeah, no, I think people are definitely paying close attention to that and skewing it to where maybe the gaps are in the current.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's globally, it changes, right? Each region is going to have a different need. So that's why it's so exciting. You know, you can kind of, you know, highlight different content from different countries in a way that fulfills the need of that country. But there may be somebody sitting in, you know, the middle of our country that would never find a piece of content anywhere else, but because it's coming to Netflix, it's available to everybody.
How many more movies does Adam Sandler have in his contract, and are you going to renew it? That's a good question.
Oh, yeah.
A good question. Yeah, I'd say probably lots. I think that's the official term, lots. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Let me read a couple more questions from the listeners here. So we had, how does one submit their project to be purchased? That comes from Don Fobbs. So how does one submit their project? Do you take projects unsolicited?
Yeah, that's all of my Uber drivers ask me the same question.
They pitch their scripts too, right?
Yeah, literally a guy tried to hand me a script and I'm just not allowed to take it. The way it works is you need representation. You know, it's just like any other thing. You know, unsolicited scripts, we've got a whole protocol of what we're supposed to follow if somebody attempts to send us something. It's just it's a no-go. You know, you've got a manager or an agent and they got relationships with people, and it's just like the other studios.
I got a couple more here. Is it true that they hire people to review new shows, or is Netflix hiring people to review shows?
There are no, but there's a lot of like kind of metadata tagging that happens to inform the algorithms. And there are people all over the world that do that type of tagging. That's definitely a job description within Netflix. Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of a fascinating one. Like, how cool to just watch content and say, yeah, it hits these, 30 categories. It's kind of interesting.
And the question you always get, like, if somebody wants to apply to work at Netflix, what kind of what's the best advice you can give them? Like, how do they go about that?
Yeah, I've got friends. Just a buddy yesterday, found a great job. It's you do something to stand out, right? You find something that is appropriate. And you do some research. Maybe it's a little digging on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever it is. Maybe find a friend of a friend, who may have that contact. And I will say, just having one conversation with somebody to kind of float you to the top of the pile is the advice I always give. And more than anything, if you do get that first phone call, know the Netflix culture deck inside and out. It's a fascinating document. You guys may be familiar with it. If you're not, check it out. And just the approach, the curiosity, the passion, just all of the different kind of tenets that they look for. Because I got to say, in the 8 interviews that I had before they gave me an offer, we talked about print maybe 5% of the time. Everything is about, because if you're in the room, the assumption is you can do the job, right? Like, you've got this skill set, you can do this job. Now I want to get to know you. It's all about culture fit. It's all about communication style. It's all about just sort of your level of excitement and passion for what you do. If you just want to show up to a 9-to-5 job, Netflix is not the place for you. They're looking for people that are going to innovate and push things forward, have uncomfortable conversations because it's the best for the company. And I've never worked in a place like that before. It is really intimidating to come into, but once you kind of embrace the ambiguity, you can do a lot. There's a lot of wiggle room, and like you said, if the idea is there, you've got that corporate budget behind you to push it forward. You're not bootstrapping anything. You can really have some impact, and impact is an important thing.
It's also really interesting to hear that from the standpoint of, I have this firm belief that the way we do business has got to fundamentally shift on this planet. And so it's great to hear that Netflix is kind of embracing that. I actually have kind of a similar situation. It's amazing to be in a place with that much freedom and creativity. But I've also had jobs where they try to micromanage, and I don't thrive there, and not too many people do. So it's interesting to hear that Netflix is also cutting edge on how they do their business.
Yeah.
And from the hierarchy perspective as well, it's really flat, right? Like I said, I got to read a question, manager, director, VP. you don't have to go through channels to get to people. If you have an idea, or again, you've got that curiosity, you go right to them, and no VP is ever going to be like, oh yeah, who do you report to? Yeah, go ask them. That's just not the way it works, and those aren't the personalities that are hired there. And that level of access and insight is exciting, and it empowers each of us to do better and make better decisions. So that part's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I've got a really good idea for marketing. How about two guys who interview the people who make the shows at Netflix, and then there's like a podcast. Check that out. And we talk about like. So I know you're not allowed to take ideas, but I think a podcast for Netflix for two guys to talk about.
Yeah,
Kevin, can you promise me? Can you promise me this, that Dark season 3 will happen? Because if you try to cancel Dark between season 3, like I'm gonna come out there with my pitchfork and
just put the sign up. Don't cancel Dark. We need some light. It's such a good show. Right?
I love that show. Oh my God.
But
it's
again,
the only show that I've really fallen in love with in the last couple of years.
Yeah. And a content or, maybe a showrunner or filmmaker that maybe we wouldn't have seen, without a global company like Netflix. So I love
German show.
Yep. I love that they're able to kind of bring those stories to a global audience because it's just so well done. I'm hoping for that season as well.
Shows
I think I saw the graphic that said it was approved for season 3, but I still, until it's out, I'm still worried.
Right. Yeah.
I know. I'm still a little hurt about the whole Marvel Netflix deal. That stung. That stung me just a bit too.
Now we're mad at Sony, so we have Sony to blame instead of Netflix now. So
yeah. So great. Well, listen, I so appreciate your time here. This was really fabulous, and we would love to have you back on the show at some point. Especially when you after the first of the year when you're working on some new projects.
Yeah. When Dark season 3 rolls out.
Right. Yeah, you're like, yeah.
All right,
yeah.
well,
I'd love that. That sounds great. I appreciate you guys having me. This was fun.
Oh man, this was fantastic. Thank you. And if there's anybody else in marketing who works for Netflix would love to be on the show, we would love to have them.
Would you like our listeners to check anything out on Netflix? Is there something you want to promote for Netflix?
About right now.
Oh man, what's going on? I mean, I saw there's a new Dave Chappelle stand-up coming up, so I'm pretty stoked on that. And then we mentioned it. That Breaking Bad movie is big on my list. Other than that, if you haven't watched every episode of Black Mirror, get on that now. It's worth it. It's scary how each of those episodes feels like maybe just one half step away from where we currently are in life.
Oh my God.
It's really well done and it's a lot of fun. And then Bandersnatch is its own really unique experience.
Now, when does Breaking Bad movie? It's October, right?
I think it's October. Yeah.
October.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's right.
It's coming quick. I'm excited.
So, and then finally, any chance of a Black Mirror SS? That the
Oh yeah. The Star Trek episode.
Oh, the spinoff.
Is there going to be a show, please? That'll make up for the OA if there's a
you probably heard the same I have. It may be, and I will be the first to watch it. So hopefully.
What happened to Space Force? Is Space Force still coming? Because I remember there was a promo for Space Force. When can we expect Space Force too?
Yeah. A couple of my friends created that promo. That came from in-house. It's from my understanding, it's coming. And Nick and I were talking about it. Like we're gonna have just a little watching party. Like we're really excited for that.
It's good timing because I heard that the official launch of the real Space Force it's like tomorrow or the next day or something. So.
Oh man, yeah, no, that's Steve Carell, man. I can't wait.
Oh, that's going to be great. So finally, lightning round. Tell me, Justin, what are you geeky about?
I'm geeky about Dark, and I will be geeky about Dark until season 3 comes out because I've got these unfinished questions. I need to know everything. That show is amazing. Like if you're gonna watch Netflix, go watch Dark. My 1-year-old son is geeky about Word Party. And what else is on? I haven't seen Stranger Things yet. I need to finish. I haven't even seen Stranger Things season 2. I'm on like episode 2.
Oh my God, dude! It's so good. It's so good. Kevin, what are you geeky about? Whatever it is in the world right now.
Oh man, I mean the content. I'm geeky about Irishman. I really want to see that. And I'm geeky about stuff that I bug my friends with. Typography. You always got to have typography. If you're going to do anything with visual communication, you better have good typography. And if you know about kerning and you teach your friends, they'll hate you forever because they're going to see bad kerning all over the place.
What's your favorite font?
Oh man, that's a good one. Kind of like Din.
Mine is Times New Roman.
Oh, don't say that.
Right now I'm geeky about, I'm learning how to play the uke, and I'm learning it on Musician, which is really one of the best apps besides the Netflix app, obviously. But yeah, I'm learning how to play guitar and ukulele, and I'm geeky out about that. So
you watch Dark with subtitles or without subtitles? 'Cause I watched the dubbed version, but I was okay with it. What's your take on that, Kevin?
I struggle with the dubs. It gets a little cheesy for me. So some dubs are well done, some are not. So I'm a subtitle guy. I like to hear the passion and the energy coming through.
As long as the font is right?
Oh man, you don't know how many conversations we've had about it. Yeah.
Kevin Laurino, everybody, thank you so much for being part of the show. And seriously, we would love to have you back. This was a lot of fun.
And go ahead and invite Reed for us too. We'll take Reed. We'll take both of you. We'll do one with Reed too.
I'll bring him along. Yeah. Looking forward to that. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin.
Take care. All right. So we'll do, after this, we'll do a little outro, but